Welcome to the Freshman Seminar presentation, Managing Your Time. Learning to manage your time in college is important because you're really setting the stage for how you'll manage your time during your career, both academic and eventually professional. And we can see on this slide here, again, I don't really read directly off the slides. Best practice is to let you read off the slides while I kind of have a general discussion of it. But future employers are wanting you to be able to balance your time, and eventually you'll have other things in the mix besides what you have now, depending on who you are and where you come from. But you can see that there are a lot of things to keep in mind, and trying to maintain good grades while also helping with your family and maintaining social ties and doing all of those things, that can be really difficult. So developing those skills during college will really help you succeed in college, do much better in college than perhaps you could if you're disorganized and not managing your time properly. And again, set you up for your procrastination can be a big part of struggling with good time management skills. And many of us deal with procrastination. Of course, you can see the statistics here. Many college students have a hard time with procrastination. Honestly, many faculty members here and elsewhere also struggle with procrastination. And many of my friends across the country who are college professors, we all tend to procrastinate too. But even if you struggle with that, there are ways that you can help yourself move past it. If we want to overcome procrastination, first it helps to understand why we procrastinate. Everybody's different and we have different reasons. I teach writing 1, writing 2, lots of writing classes. That's kind of been my main career here. And I've dealt with a lot of procrastination by students, and one of the things that some students say is that they just want to get things right, and they're not sure what they're supposed to do, but they don't want to get a bad grade, and so they keep pushing things off, and eventually they kind of rope themselves into a corner where they don't have much time to write anyway, so they don't get the grade that they would want anyway because they procrastinated. But at least then they have a reason, I guess. We also want to think about setting ourselves up to not be distracted as well, and to make sure that we're organized, make sure that we're setting good goals, which is something we'll be working on in this class. And also sometimes we just find things either boring or just distasteful. We don't like them, we don't want to do them, so we push them off. So as we go throughout the rest of this presentation, we'll talk about how to overcome some of these things and kind of work past some of this procrastination and learn how to manage our time more wisely. Part of staying on track with keeping your time managed well is keeping on top of your motivation levels, and we'll be talking about some other aspects of this throughout the course. But in general, we want to learn how to self-motivate ourselves. One aspect of that is being able to set and achieve your own goals for yourself. So again, we've talked about setting goals early on in this class. We'll keep chipping away at that. You also want to know what motivates you. Some people are motivated by rewards. Some people are motivated by not failing. Some people are motivated by pleasing others. Some people are motivated just by self-satisfaction. There are a lot of reasons we might be motivated, and figure out what motivates you, and then again set your goals and be able to reward yourself, or at least look into the future rewards based on those things. Many of your professors here can help you stay motivated. We can help talk to you about what motivates you. We can help bring some things up that may help motivate you and encourage you. So again, find a trusted professor. Even if you're working through a project in a class that has nothing to do with this professor, but you trust that person, you may as well go to them and just say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Anything you can do to help me, at least with my motivation level. And many of us are here and happy to help you. Sometimes we end up overextending ourselves, and that can really affect our time management skills and again lead to procrastination. So sometimes we have to figure out what our own limits are. Figure out what exactly you can handle before you start getting stressed out. When we get stressed out, we tend to make even worse time management decisions and do things to really hurt ourselves. So we can, if we need to, in an academic setting, withdraw from a class, but make sure that you talk with financial aid, talk with your advisor to make sure that this is not going to affect financial aid in a really bad way or affect your eligibility if you're a student athlete. Sometimes in general, we just learn to say no, and that's really hard to do. I struggle with this quite a bit myself, but we need to learn when to say no how we can get out of whether it's social things or things that are good things, sometimes helping people with things. Sometimes we just need to say no to keep ourselves healthy. And we've covered some negative parts of time management so far and looked at how we can really struggle. Let's talk about some ways to overcome that. One of the really basic ones is a to-do list. A lot of people do this already. I'm sure many of the people watching this presentation already are on top of this. But for some of us, this is a really simple thing. And for me, this has sort of been a lifesaver, learning how to do this in an effective way that helps me. And what I use is an app called Evernote. I've included that name down in here, and I will include a link to an article about how to use Evernote effectively, especially for college students, in our supplemental handouts area or elsewhere in this module's work. To-do lists can help you see a very practical list of what you have to do. Sometimes that does make you feel a little bit more overwhelmed, but sometimes that helps you feel good as you check things off the list, and it helps you prioritize and figure out, okay, what's most important? What do I need to accomplish next? What can wait till next week? So that's really what I recommend, is just setting up a to-do list and finding a way to make that work. Another big help can be daily or weekly planners. Again, you can do this either with a nice old school hard copy or with an application. A lot of us like to use these online and on our phones and things like that, but sometimes there's just nothing like having a hard copy of it with you as well, so you can go through and write in a more tangible way, and sometimes writing things down helps us remember. As you start working on your weekly list of things to accomplish, you may want to go ahead and have a general categories list just to make sure you're not dropping anything or forgetting anything. Obviously, your class schedule comes in there. A lot of us have work schedules that are not that flexible. Some of us can be a little flexible with it, but again, we got to keep that in mind. Same with athletic schedules. Those are pretty well set up for student athletes ahead of time. We also want to make sure that we remember time for work as far as homework and studying. Now, that should go without saying, but I want to make a very clear point here. You should plan to spend 2 hours for every hour you in class. So if you are in class for a couple of hours a week, you need to spend at least 2 more hours for each of those class sessions working. Usually for a 3 credit hour class then every week, you should plan about 6 hours for that class of research, studying, things like that. And again, that's going to flex some weeks. Some weeks it'll be a little less, some weeks it'll be a little bit more. But that should be something that you plan on. And then if it's a little less than that, you can adjust. It's a lot easier to ratchet it down and adjust that way than having to add a bunch of time at the end of the week because you didn't get things done. So keep that in mind. Again, you want to schedule things to be healthy physically and mentally, exercise and time to be social, work with your family. And many of us have other commitments that we have to keep in mind as well. But by, again, keeping these general categories in mind at the beginning of the week or whenever we're scheduling, we can just sort of sketch things out. And planning really, really helps us know what to do. We've stayed pretty basic up to this point, but the next few slides are really going to get us into little deeper territory, some more specific techniques here. One thing that you want to consider here is paying attention to your own body's needs and scheduling. Some of us are more alert at other times than others. I learned as a college student that I really had to stay away from taking classes right after lunch because I had a tendency to fall asleep. And so there were some classes where I was really into the subject. I really enjoyed the class. I loved it. I was getting good grades. But every day when we went to class about the same time, I just started falling asleep. And that's still true now. Or if I'm at a conference or something and I'm just sitting there during sessions, sure enough, right about 1 o'clock, I conk out. So I have to make sure that even when I'm doing my work, I have to be able to do my work at a time when I'm alert. So maybe for some people that's the morning. Other people, they take a while to wake up and they do really well in the evening. And sometimes you can schedule classes at those times. Sometimes you don't have much choice with that, but it's good to be aware of that. You also want to make sure that for whatever you're doing, as you enter college, you're going to need a little bit more time, sometimes a lot more time, for tutoring and research. And not everyone uses tutoring in college. I encourage you to at least consider it, even if you're doing pretty well. You should at least be visiting the writing lab fairly often to get some more feedback and help. Even if you're an A or B student, they can be a big help for you. But that takes time, and you need to plan ahead to get that feedback so you're not trying to get it at the last minute. Research can take a lot longer in college because you're going to be introduced to many more sources, and other sources where it's going to take you a lot more time to read through them. So plan a lot more time for work and research related to your classes. So that all figures into how much time you're going to need on a project. And again, with your major projects, it's good to break them down into smaller steps. I know I cover that in Writing 1 as well, but breaking them down into different steps that might be just almost the same size as homework and then just kind of keeping going on them consistently, that can really help you avoid a panic situation when something's coming due and it's a major project and you really haven't started on it yet. So factor that time when you're planning out your week so that, again, you have time to work on things slowly. Then as you move forward in your academic career, you want to think about how you create your scheduling. And some of us are so busy that we just kind of fit classes in where we can, and that's okay. Others of us sort of have the ability to schedule classes in different blocks of time, and we may not have as many overall responsibilities that take precedence over when we do our academic scheduling. We're all different, but start being able to schedule your semester around what works for you. So, for example, some students really like to just stack their classes on top of each other. Again, some work-related reasons. Other students like to spread their classes out over 4 days. Sometimes we even have classes on Fridays. Some universities have classes that are Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, and then just Tuesday, Thursday classes, just different time periods. We do have some evening classes. A lot of students really love those. I love teaching evening classes. Some colleges have more weekend classes. We don't have a ton right now, but we may in the future. But you need to think about those. Again, you need to consider what your own needs are. Some students can handle taking 3 or 4 classes pretty much back to back to back to back, and they're able to retain the knowledge pretty well. They like staying active and alert for that long of a time. It works really well for them. Other students, after a class or two, they really get wiped out. They need a break. So you need to figure out what's going to work with that. The other thing is that we all have different attention spans. Some of us can just stay locked in for a long time. Others of us, again, we need to have the different breaks between when we're paying attention and really in those intense settings. So think about those things as you start scheduling even for another semester. And then, then when you're actually in the middle of your classes, you need to be able to find to prioritize what you're doing with your time and really make the best of the time that you do have. So it's good to find on every campus places where you have distraction-free zones and places where you can go study. And it may not seem like it's a place where is really open for students to just lounge around, but you're not lounging, you're working. There are places at Ancilla College that you may not consider going. Again, you want to maybe ask somebody if it's okay to go in a certain place, but there are some quieter spots that a lot of students don't really discover that you might want to seek out, especially if you're on campus a lot and you're busy and you're not really sure how to get away from other people who are going to distract you. Again, having some consistency about when you study. Again, you want to make sure that you work on your large tasks a little bit of a time rather than just waiting and then cramming them in all at the end. As you set up some study time and you know how long you have, again, determine what you want to accomplish during that study time. That way you don't spend too long on one class and sort of give another class short shrift. There are a couple of other suggestions here that we've kind of hit already. Sometimes you can get to material within an hour class. Sometimes you can't. Depends on what your scheduling's like. And again, schedule time for when you're most alert so that you get the most out. More recommendations for how to get the most out of that study time is to really put the hardest one or the one that you care about the least right at the front. That way you'll be less likely to procrastinate out of it and just make it a habit of doing that. That's one that's really changed my ability to get things done is a lot of times the things that I'm least looking forward to, I'll push those to the front. That way, and you see they're on the list that we should reward ourselves, but that way I can reward myself by then working on something that interests me a little bit more, that's going to be a little bit more creative for me. I hate being bored. I'm very rarely bored, but there are things that I really just don't like doing. So again, I make sure that I get those out of the way so that as I get more tired, as I get more distracted, I'm able to at least stay locked in on the things that I enjoy a little bit more. People kind of vary in their ability to multitask. but learn what your limits are. And usually we're not as good as we think we are at multitasking. So again, trying to stay locked in is important. Again, finding people to help you, and flexibility is important. What we mean by be flexible, that's kind of a generic term here. What we mean by that is that you have to be willing to sit down with yourself sometimes and realize you're not going to have that ideal, perfect amount of study time in the quietest place ever. You sometimes have to find a way to make something work even though it's not ideal. And maybe that means, again, squirreling yourself away in a different place that isn't as close to things as you would like, or maybe that means that you change your schedule a little bit for the quieter time when a roommate isn't around. You have to learn to be a little bit flexible. And of course, rewarding yourself. Whatever motivates you, whatever you like, that's fine. If that means you keep a little snack around that when you accomplish something, you get through it, that's fine. Some people say rewarding yourself with food is not a good idea. So find something else. If you love exercise, maybe you reward yourself with exercise when you accomplish a certain amount of things. Other people reward themselves with going out to social things and saying, you know what, if I accomplish the things on my list, then I will go out with my friends tonight. Otherwise, I know I'm going to have to stay. So to sum it all up, sometimes you just have to work through procrastination and work through some of these things, but find what works for you and look at a lot of different options and figure out what's the best for you to maintain and get your schedule going. If that means sitting down with someone like a faculty member or an advisor, somebody you trust, maybe an older student that you look up to and know does really well, that can be very helpful in finding somebody who can mentor you as well. But ultimately, managing your time is really up to you. So good luck, and I'm happy to help if I can.